So, what is your name,
My name is Aaron Nilson.
and what branch of service were you in?
I was in the United States Navy.
What were your dates of service?
I served from May 1986 and I retired in November of 2011.
Um, how old were you when you first decided to join the military?
I was 20 years old.
Um, can you talk about like your first days of the service when you like signed up and everything? What was going through your mind?
Well, I was a junior in college and I was getting a little burned out on my classes, so I decided I needed to do something a little bit different with my life at the time. So I decided to look at joining the Navy Reserve. I had three other friends that were joining the military at the same time. But I knew that I wanted to finish my college degree, so I joined the reserves instead of going on active duty.
All right, can you tell us about your boot camp / training experiences?
I went to boot camp in Naval Recruit Training Center, Orlando, Florida. I was there from May until July, about 8.5 weeks. We did lots of physical training there. We did rifle drills. We learned some basic marksmanship, learned some firefighting skills aboard ship, damage control techniques, which is important in the Navy. We also learned a lot about naval history and basically general knowledge about the Navy.
Before entering the military, did you have any specialized skills or training experiences that helped you get your job?
Because I had over 60 credit hours at school, I went into the Navy at a rank of seaman, which is E3, which is the third enlisted rank up from the bottom. I also scored well on my ASVAB test, so I was able to get technical training in aviation electronics.
And then can you tell us what type of work you performed while you were in the service?
For the first 6.5 years, I was an avionics technician. I worked on radios and radio navigation equipment and radars, specifically electronics that went into the P-3 sub-hunting aircraft. I never worked on the aircraft themselves. I just worked on the electronic black boxes that came out of the planes.
All right. So, what unit did you serve in while you were in the military?
Well, I went to boot camp in Orlando, Florida, and then I went to A school at Naval Air Technical Training Center, NAS Memphis, Tennessee. I was there for 5 months, and then when I got done with my technical training there, I went to NAS Point Magoo, where I started doing my weekend drills. The unit I was attached to there was Fleet Activities Okinawa, which supported everything that the Navy does in Okinawa, Japan. I was in that unit for 6.5 years until I moved away from California. When I moved to Nebraska, I got out for about 16 months and started missing the camaraderie of the reserves and the Navy, so I contacted a recruiter and looked at getting back into the Navy. And at that time I was working in the welding shop at Bonnevilla. So the recruiter brought me in and they changed my rating from avionics technician to hull maintenance technician, which is basically what they call a welder or ship fitter. And then at that point in time, I joined the Seabees, and I was part of Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 15, Det 0415 at Naval Reserve Center, Lincoln, Nebraska. I spent 10 years in the Seabees in Lincoln. While I was at Lincoln, I went over to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. I went to Germany for a month. I went to construction projects in Coronado, California, which is San Diego. I also went to Dahlgren, Virginia. I attended classes at Little Creek, Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek, and again at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. I also made 4 trips to Fort Hunter Liggett in Central California, where the Seabees do a lot of their field training exercises to prepare for combat. I did so many things in that unit. It's hard to remember them all.
Where all were you stationed?
Well, there was NAS Point Magoo, Naval Reserve Center, Lincoln, and then we closed the Reserve Center in Lincoln, Nebraska in 2007, and we started drilling at Naval Operations Support Center, Omaha. While I was at Omaha, they built us a brand new reserve center off at Air Force Base, where I finished the last 2 years of my career. After I got out of the Seabees, I was in a training unit in Lincoln, Nebraska, which was just a collection of sailors that were assigned to different odd units throughout the country. So we met as a group just for administrative purposes. And while I was in that unit, I was the leading petty officer. I was pretty much responsible for the day-to-day activities for that unit, writing all the personnel evals for all the members of that unit. And then when I transferred to Naval Operations Support Center, Omaha, then I joined a unit called Surge Main, which was a maintenance unit that took all the engineering rates or jobs in the Navy, those personnel, and we supported the 4 public naval shipyards throughout the country, which are in Pearl Harbor, Norfolk, Virginia, Portsmouth, Maine, and Bremerton, Washington. So that's where we would go to do our training. And so the last 2 years that I was in the Navy, I went to Naval Shipyard, Pearl Harbor, and supported the health and safety office there.
Cool. And then, what was your unit? What were they all named officially?
Fleet Activities Okinawa, 0176, Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 15, Naval Reserve Center, Lincoln Training Unit, and then Surge Main.
And then, how did you get promoted while you were in the reserves?
Promotions in the Navy are done through a combination of an advancement exam that you take annually and your performance evaluations, and then depending on the actual job that you have, that kind of depends on your ability to advance. So.
All right, and then, and what was the highest rank you achieved?
I retired as a Chief Petty Officer, which is E7.
And then, can you tell me about your commanding officers?
Commanding officers, They were an interesting group of people. Some were more memorable than others.
Do you remember any like specific qualities that they had that you specifically liked?
They were all very personable, and they were, for the most part, easy to work with, and they all demonstrated great leadership qualities and being looking out for the people under their command. That's something that's very necessary in the armed forces.
And then, do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events while you were in the reserves?
That I can say on camera?
I don't know.
What did I write down on? What do we have on there?
Nothing.
Nothing. Oh.
Yeah. How about, did you go to work? Did you work or go to school while you decided to enlist?
Well, I was going to school and working when I enlisted. I had a full-time job working for Chevron.
Right, and then was your education supported by the GI Bill?
Yes, when I returned from my initial training period, I completed my degree at Cal State Northridge, and I used the GI Bill to pay for a large portion of that the last 2 years I was in school.
And then while after you were in the service, did you join any veterans organizations?
Yes, I'm currently a member of the American Legion post here in Aurora, Nebraska.
And then what did you go on to do as a career after you enlisted up until this point?
I've had several jobs over the years. I worked for Chief Industries as a welder and assembler. For Chief Industries, I worked at Bonneville and Chief Fabrication Division in Grand Island. For the last 21 years, I've been a registered nurse, and I work at the emergency room at CHI St. Francis Medical Center in Grand Island.
While you were away for those couple weeks at a time while in the reserves, where did you stay? What was the living conditions like?
They were generally pretty nice. We generally stayed in dormitory-style accommodations, typical of what you'd find in a college dorm. The higher your rank, then the more private your accommodations are. When I first joined, I typically stayed in rooms with anywhere from 1 to 4 other individuals, and by the time I retired, I always had my own room.
And then, what was the weather like while you were on training?
The weather?
It's
The weather.
Nebraska, so.
Well, actually, some of the worst weather that I trained in, when I was in the Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 15, we did a week-long field exercise at Fort Hunter Liggett in Central California, and that was in February, and it rained for virtually the entire week. So we were outside in the rain, doing convoy duties in the rain, in the back of open trucks, driving down dirt roads. So that was quite miserable.
What was your most exhausting experience, or just experiences that you thought this wasn't cut out for you?
Well, that's a good question. Sometimes those field exercises could drag on a little bit longer than what you'd like them to do, especially if the weather wasn't very nice. However, you're just kind of trained in the military to deal with those situations, because that in the real world, war doesn't stop for bad weather or other situations, and you just gotta move through it and make the best of it.
And then what was your most interesting experience while you were in the military?
Probably when I was with the Seabees in Germany. We were in the Stuttgart area supporting Naval Special Warfare Unit and Army Special Forces Unit doing some light construction work for them. And I was actually in Germany on 9/11.
And then can you talk about, like, the other day you were telling me about how the commanding officer came over and told you guys about the first tower hit? And
Yeah, we were finishing up our work because that happened on 9/11, and we were supposed to fly home on the 13th. And so we were finishing up the construction projects that we were working on, and it was about a little after 2 in the afternoon, and our chief petty officer that was supervising our crew came over to our job site and told us that a plane had just flown into the first tower at the World Trade Center. And we were all kind of like, that's really weird and bizarre, because how does a plane hit a building like that? And then he went to jump in his truck to go tell another crew that was working at another site, and all of a sudden he jumped out of his truck and ran back up to us and said that a second plane had crashed into the other tower. And of course, at that point in time, we knew it was more than just an accident. So we actually got delayed in Germany and had to spend an extra week there because no airplanes were flying. It was quite interesting to see the gates to the U.S. military bases in Germany kind of turn into little shrines. It wasn't more than, within hours of the attacks, flowers started appearing at the gates, and it was really moving to see all the flags in Europe come down to half-staff and to honor the people that were killed in the attacks that day.
And then can you tell me maybe about your most exciting experience of just, like, you were so pumped up that you didn't want it to end? You didn't want to come back?
Well, anytime you get to go overseas, you get to do lots of things, and you never really want that to end. I know an exciting thing I got to see once when I was in Okinawa, we got to see a SR-71 aircraft come out of its hangar and take off, because those flights were all top secret, and you just, whenever you saw one of those planes on the runway, you knew something was going on, and it was exciting to see a plane that's so unique actually fly once. It was a very unique opportunity.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Definitely influenced my view of the world. Having been overseas to Okinawa and Japan, and then Germany. When I was in Germany, I also visited Austria and France, and you you figure out that the world is a lot bigger than what you are here in the United States, and there's lots of different viewpoints on things, and you also learn the importance of diplomacy in the world. And even to this day, even though I've been retired for almost a decade, I still follow the events of the military and on the world stage quite closely.
And then did you ever get any free time while you were over in other countries?
Yeah, when I was overseas in Germany and Okinawa, we had to work days. Some work days are longer than others, but we always had our evenings off, and we always had 1 or 2 days available on the weekends to do sightseeing and be tourists. So I made sure to take advantage of that. I know the 3 different times I was in Okinawa, I've probably been all over that entire island, seeing the different sites there.
What were some of the coolest things you saw, like nature-wise or architectural?
When I was in Germany, just going over there and seeing all the churches, I started taking pictures of all the churches because they're all old and cool looking. And then it kind of came to a realization that there are no new churches in Germany because the country's been around so long. Seeing the cathedrals and the castles in Germany were real exciting.
And then, what'd you do to entertain yourself when you weren't sightseeing? Did you like watch TV, or?
I was over there with with other members of my unit, so we'd just, hang out. We'd watch TV, watch movies, barbecue. We'd have, being in the Navy, you're always close to a beach generally, so you always have beach parties and stuff like that. Do lots of, swimming, snorkeling.
Do you remember any humorous or unusual events while you were in the military?
I knew you were going to come back around to that. I have to think about that one.
All right, we'll come back to it. Do you recall the day your service ended when you retired? Do you remember what that was like? What feelings were going through your head?
It was a very emotional day because I'd been in the Navy for 25 years, and literally one weekend a month every month for 25 years I had gone to do my duty, and just realizing that part of my life was coming to an end it was kind of sad. To this day I still miss being around my fellow shipmates, just from all the memories and stuff that we had done together. I'm still in touch with a lot of them on like Facebook and stuff like that, and we share memories back and forth and stuff. So
What made you want to retire after 25 years?
well, the Navy has this thing called high year tenure. So once you've been in for so many years, then they stop paying you depending on what your pay grade is. And I had reached that point in my career where they were no longer going to pay me to do my drills. So there was a little bit of a financial decision there, because I had to drive to Omaha to do my drills each month. And also I'd been in for 25 years. It was time for me to step back and let other people take my place.
And then what were some of the best things you gained out of being in the military, like personality-wise, or?
Well, definitely a respect for government and the structure of our military. The fact that we have a military that's civilian-led. That's something that's somewhat unique in the United States and very important. You can see examples around the world where the military has too much control over what's going on in their country, and that's not right. Also, I got a good understanding of the military's role in society.
Right. And then is there anything that you'd like to add